If you ever wonder why I left, remember this. I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because I was tired of feeling invisible in the same house where I was supposed to belong. Emily Carter whispered those words to herself as she stood outside her own front door, her hand resting on the cold silver handle she had touched thousands of times before. For 8 years, this house had been the place where she built her dreams, where she imagined Sunday mornings filled with laughter, family dinners, and a love that would grow stronger with every passing year. But tonight, beneath the soft glow of the porch light, it felt like a place she no longer recognized. The suitcase beside her held only a few days of clothes, some personal belongings, and the painful decision she never thought she would have to make. She wasn't running away from her family. She was trying to remember who she was before she became someone who was always waiting. Waiting for Nathan Whitmore to come home. Waiting for him to look up from his phone. Waiting for him to notice that she was not just the person who packed lunches, scheduled appointments, and tucked their 2-year-old son Liam into bed every night. Nathan had never been cruel. That was what made everything harder. There were no dramatic fights, no angry words, no single moment she could point to and say, that was when everything ended. Instead, their marriage had slowly become quiet. The kind of quiet that filled every room. The kind that made two people living under the same roof feel like strangers passing through a hotel. Nathan was a successful CEO who carried the weight of an entire company on his shoulders. Everyone admired him. Everyone called him brilliant, disciplined, and unstoppable. But Emily only saw the man who used to dance with her in their kitchen while making coffee on Saturday mornings. She remembered the Nathan who laughed too loudly at bad jokes, who held her hand during their first apartment tour, and who promised her that no matter how busy life became, they would always choose each other. Somewhere along the way, that promise had become buried under endless meetings, late nights, and conversations. That never happened. She looked through the living room window and saw the life she had built. Liam's little toys were scattered across the carpet. His favorite blue blanket was folded on the couch. A family photo sat on the shelf, showing 3 smiling faces from a time when happiness felt effortless. Emily pressed her lips together, fighting back tears. The hardest part was not leaving Nathan. The hardest part was leaving the hope that one day he would finally notice she was slipping away. Earlier that evening, Nathan had barely looked away from his laptop when she told him she needed space. He had simply said, "Emily, can we talk about this later? I have a presentation tomorrow." That sentence had hurt more than anger ever could, because it confirmed what she had been feeling for months. She was always something that could wait. She took one final look around the house before placing the spare key on the small table near the entrance. "Maybe you'll understand when I'm gone," she whispered. She turned away, walked down the driveway, and forced herself not to look back. She drove several miles to her sister's house, where she planned to stay for a few days while she figured out what came next. But before she could fall asleep that night, one thought kept returning to her mind. Liam. She missed him already. Her fingers moved almost automatically toward her phone. She opened the baby monitor app they used to check on him whenever they were away. She told herself she only wanted to see his face. She only wanted to know he was sleeping peacefully. The screen loaded slowly, showing the familiar room filled with soft moonlight. Liam was asleep, hugging his favorite stuffed bear. Emily smiled faintly through her tears. Then she noticed something unusual. Nathan was sitting beside the crib. He wasn't working. He wasn't looking at his phone. He was simply watching their son sleep. Emily held her breath as Nathan gently adjusted Liam's blanket and lowered his voice. She expected him to say something about tomorrow's schedule or another reminder about work. But instead, the words that came from her husband's mouth made her entire body freeze. "I'm sorry, buddy," Nathan whispered. "I think Mommy believes I don't love her anymore." Emily stared at the screen, unable to move. The room around her disappeared, and for a few seconds, the only thing she could hear was Nathan's quiet voice coming through the baby monitor. The same voice she had spent months believing had become distant and empty now sounded completely different. It carried something she had not heard in a long time. Regret. "I know Mommy thinks I do not care anymore," Nathan whispered as he looked at Liam sleeping peacefully. "And maybe she has every reason to think that. I have not been the husband she deserves." Emily covered her mouth with her hand, afraid that even her breathing would interrupt the moment. She had imagined many things she might hear if she ever saw Nathan alone. She expected frustration. She expected indifference. She expected him to move on as if her leaving changed nothing. But she never expected this. Nathan reached down and gently touched the edge of Liam's blanket, making sure their son was comfortable. "I should have told her everything," he continued. "I should have stopped pretending that working all the time was the same thing as protecting my family." Emily felt a painful emotion rise inside her. Confusion. For so long, she had carried the belief that Nathan chose everything else over them. His company, his meetings, his endless responsibilities. She thought she had become the last thing on his list. But now, sitting alone in her sister's guest room, watching her husband talk to their son in the middle of the night, she wondered if she had only seen one side of the story. Nathan leaned back in the chair beside Liam's crib and let out a slow breath. "Your mom thinks I forgot our anniversary because I do not love her anymore," he said softly. "But the truth is, I spent that entire day trying to finish the biggest deal of my career because I thought it would finally give us the future I promised her." Emily closed her eyes. She remembered that anniversary. She remembered waiting at home with a small dinner prepared, checking her phone every few minutes, watching the candles burn lower until she finally gave up. She remembered feeling foolish for expecting anything. She never knew Nathan had been working toward something bigger. She never knew there was a reason behind his silence. Nathan looked toward the doorway of Liam's room, as if he expected Emily to appear there even though he knew she was gone. "I thought if I worked harder, I could give you everything you wanted," he said. "A beautiful home, security, a comfortable life for Liam. But somewhere along the way, I forgot the one thing you actually needed from me." His voice became quieter. "You needed me." Those two words hit Emily harder than anything else she had heard that night, because they were the words she had wanted to say for so long. She never wanted expensive gifts. She never wanted a perfect house. She only wanted Nathan beside her. She wanted conversations that lasted longer than 5 minutes. She wanted to feel chosen. Nathan picked up a small picture frame from the nightstand beside Liam's crib. It was a photo of the three of them at the beach last summer. Emily remembered that day clearly. Liam had spent hours building sandcastles while Nathan laughed and helped him. It had been one of the last times their family felt completely connected. "I miss her," Nathan whispered. "I miss the way she used to tell me everything. I miss when she looked at me like I was her favorite person in the world." Emily felt tears fall silently down her face. She had spent so much time wondering why Nathan stopped reaching for her that she never considered he might be wondering the same thing. Then Nathan said something that made her heart stop. "Tomorrow, I am going to fix this. Not with money. Not with promises. I am going to actually listen to her." Emily looked at the phone in her hand, suddenly unsure of everything she thought she knew about her marriage. For the first time in months, she was not certain that leaving was the answer. She had walked away believing Nathan did not care. But now, through a small screen and a quiet bedroom, she was discovering a truth she never expected. Maybe they were not two people who stopped loving each other. Maybe they were two people who had forgotten how to reach each other. Emily did not sleep that night. She stayed awake long after Nathan carried Liam back to bed and turned off the lights. The baby monitor screen remained open in her hand, glowing softly in the darkness of her sister's guest room. She knew she should close it. She knew she should put the phone away and give herself time to think. But for the first time in months, she felt like she was seeing the man she married instead of the man she thought she had lost. The next morning, Emily sat quietly at the kitchen table while her sister Rachel made coffee. Rachel had known her sister long enough to recognize the look on her face. It was not the look of someone who had made a decision. It was the look of someone who had discovered a secret they were not prepared to understand. "You look like you did not sleep at all," Rachel said gently. Emily wrapped both hands around her coffee cup and stared at the steam rising from it. "I heard Nathan talking to Liam last night." Rachel raised an eyebrow. "And?" Emily looked down. "He misses me." The words felt strange coming out of her mouth. For weeks, she had convinced herself that Nathan was comfortable without her, that maybe her absence would finally prove she was right to leave. But after hearing his quiet confession, everything felt less simple. Rachel sat across from her. "Emily, you have to remember something. Loving someone and knowing how to show it are not always the same thing." Emily looked toward the window, watching people walk through the neighborhood, carrying groceries, walking dogs, living ordinary lives. "I just felt so alone," she whispered. "I was standing next to my own husband and still felt like I was invisible." Rachel reached across the table and held her hand. "Then maybe the question is not whether you love him. Maybe the question is whether both of you are willing to stop hiding behind your pain." Across town, Nathan was sitting in the same kitchen where Emily had prepared countless breakfasts. For the first time in years, the room felt different. Not because anything had changed, but because he finally noticed what was missing. The empty chair across from him. The second coffee mug that was no longer there. The small details that Emily had brought into his life without asking for recognition. He looked at his phone several times, wanting to call her, but stopping himself each time. He knew a simple apology would not erase months of loneliness. He knew saying, "I am sorry," was only the beginning. So instead, he did something he had avoided for a long time. He started writing. Not an email, not a business message. A letter. A real letter. He wrote about the first day he met Emily at a small coffee shop downtown. He wrote about how she was the only person who spoke to him like he was just Nathan, not the CEO everyone wanted something from. He wrote about the night Liam was born and how he promised himself he would become the kind of father his son could always depend on. Then he stopped and stared at the blank space below his words. Because the hardest thing to admit was the truth. He had spent years trying to build a perfect life while ignoring the person who made that life meaningful. Later that afternoon, Emily checked the baby monitor again. This time, Nathan was not beside Liam. He was in the living room, holding the letter he had written. She watched as he looked at a family photo on the shelf. His expression was not cold. It was not distant. It was the face of a man who realized he had almost lost something priceless. Then Nathan quietly said, "I do not know if Emily will forgive me, but I need her to know that she was never the problem." Emily froze. Those words stayed with her long after the screen went dark. Because for the first time, she wondered if the distance between them was not created by a lack of love. Maybe it was created by two people who were both waiting for the other person to make the first move. For the first time in months, Emily stopped asking herself whether Nathan loved her and started asking a harder question. If he did love her, why had they both allowed their marriage to become something that hurt them so deeply? She sat on Rachel's couch that evening, staring at the baby monitor sitting on the coffee table. The small screen was no longer just a way to see Liam. It had become a window into a side of Nathan she had never known existed. A side that was quiet, vulnerable, and full of feelings he had never shared. But as the hours passed, Emily realized there were still pieces of the story she did not understand. She knew Nathan missed her. She knew he regretted making her feel alone. But she did not know why he had changed so much. She did not know when the man who once made her laugh every morning became the man who barely spoke at dinner. The answers were hidden in the years between their happiest memories and their current silence. 3 years earlier, Nathan Whitmore was not just a successful businessman. He was a man trying to prove he could build something meaningful. When Emily first met him, he was ambitious but different. He worked hard, but he always made time for the people he loved. He would leave his office early on Fridays just to take Emily to her favorite little restaurant downtown. He remembered every small detail about her. The way she liked her coffee. The songs she played when she was happy. The way she smiled whenever she talked about designing homes for families. Emily had always believed Nathan was the strongest person she knew. But what she never saw was how much pressure he carried alone. After his company expanded, Nathan became responsible for hundreds of employees. Every decision affected other people's lives. Every mistake had consequences. He started believing that showing weakness meant failing the people who depended on him. So instead of sharing his worries with Emily, he kept them hidden. At first, it was small. A late meeting here. A business trip there. A dinner missed because of an important call. Nathan told himself it was temporary. He told himself he was doing it for their future. But temporary problems have a way of becoming permanent habits. The more stressed he became, the quieter he grew. The quieter he grew, the more Emily felt rejected. They were standing on opposite sides of the same problem, both believing they were alone. One evening, months before Emily left, Nathan had sat in his car outside their house for almost an hour before coming inside. He had just received difficult news about the company and felt completely overwhelmed. He wanted to walk through the door and tell Emily everything. He wanted to admit that he was scared and that he did not have all the answers. But when he saw her preparing dinner and smiling at Liam, he made a choice. He chose silence because he thought he was protecting her from his problems. He did not realize that silence was creating a bigger distance between them. Back in the present, Emily listened again to the recording from the baby monitor. Nathan was not talking this time. He was sitting beside Liam's bed, reading one of his favorite bedtime stories. His voice was gentle, patient, the same voice Emily remembered from the beginning of their relationship. She realized something that hurt, but also gave her hope. Nathan had not stopped being the person she loved. He had simply buried that person beneath fear, responsibility, and the belief that he had to carry everything alone. Meanwhile, Nathan placed the letter he wrote on the kitchen table. He knew he could not force Emily to come back. He knew apologies could not erase the loneliness she had felt. All he could do was finally be honest. When Emily saw him place the letter there, she understood that the next step would not be about proving who was right or wrong. It would be about discovering whether two people who still cared about each other could finally stop hiding behind their pain. Emily spent the next morning replaying every moment she had witnessed through the baby monitor. She thought about Nathan sitting beside Liam, speaking words she had waited months to hear. She thought about the letter sitting on their kitchen table, filled with feelings he had kept hidden for far too long. But one question continued to remain in her mind. What else had Nathan kept from her? Not because she believed he was hiding something terrible, but because she was beginning to understand that the man she lived with had been carrying an entire world inside him that she never saw. That afternoon, Emily returned to the house while Nathan was at work. She told herself she was only there to collect a few more things. She told herself she was not looking for answers. But as soon as she stepped inside, familiar emotions surrounded her. The smell of the coffee Nathan always made in the mornings. Liam's small drawings attached to the refrigerator. The blanket on the couch where they used to watch movies together after putting their son to bed. It was still their home. It was not just a place filled with memories of what went wrong. It was also filled with reminders of everything they had once done right. Emily walked upstairs and entered their bedroom. For a moment, she stood silently near the closet, remembering the days when she and Nathan had shared dreams about their future. She remembered how excited they were when they found out they were going to become parents. Nathan had cried when he first held Liam. He had looked at Emily and promised that he would spend his life protecting their little family. That memory felt almost impossible to connect with the distant man she had known recently. Then Emily noticed something she had never seen before. A small wooden box was placed on the top shelf of Nathan's closet. It was carefully hidden behind old documents and things he rarely used. Curiosity pulled her closer. Inside the box were memories. Not secrets meant to hurt her. Memories meant to be shared. There were handwritten notes from the early years of their relationship. There were pictures from their first apartment. There was a small card Emily had given Nathan when he received his first major business award. She remembered writing it quickly because she thought he would not care about something simple. But Nathan had kept it for years. Beneath those memories was a collection of letters. Every letter had her name written on the front. Emily sat down on the edge of the bed, holding the first one with shaking hands. The date was from almost a year earlier. She opened it slowly. Nathan had written about how much he missed the way they used to talk. He wrote about noticing that Emily had become quieter. He wrote about wanting to fix things, but not knowing where to begin. The next letter said something that made her stop reading. I know you think I am choosing work over you. The truth is, I am scared that if I stop working, I will lose the life I built. For us. Emily lowered the paper and closed her eyes. She finally understood. Nathan had not been ignoring her because she was unimportant. He had been struggling with the belief that his value came only from what he could provide. He thought being a good husband meant solving every problem before anyone noticed. But in trying to carry everything alone, he had created the one thing he feared most: distance. Emily carefully placed the letter back in the box. Her heart felt heavy, but not with anger anymore. It was filled with sadness for all the conversations they never had. All the moments when they both needed comfort but chose silence instead. Before leaving, Emily noticed one final item at the bottom of the box. It was a video recording on a small storage drive with a handwritten label. The words on it were simple. For Emily. When I finally learned how to say everything I should have said. She stood there holding it, knowing that whatever was on that recording might change the way she saw Nathan forever. For the first time since she left, Emily did not feel like she was walking away from her marriage. She felt like she was finally walking toward the truth. Emily sat in her car outside the house for almost 20 minutes, holding the small storage drive in her hand. She had told herself she was ready to know the truth, but now that the moment had arrived, she felt afraid. Not afraid of what Nathan had done, but afraid of what she might discover about everything she had misunderstood. She finally walked back inside and connected the storage drive to the living room television. The screen lit up, and after a few seconds, Nathan appeared. It was not the Nathan she saw every day. It was the Nathan from years ago, the man with a warm smile and a relaxed expression. He was sitting in the corner of their old apartment, the first place they had called home together. Emily immediately recognized the room. The walls were empty because they had just moved in. Their furniture was simple. Their dreams were bigger than their bank account. But they were happy. Nathan looked directly into the camera. Emily, I do not know when you will watch this, he said softly. Maybe. You will never see it. Maybe I will find the courage to say these things to you myself. But I wanted to leave these words somewhere, just in case. Emily held her breath. Nathan continued talking about the first time he realized he loved her. He talked about how she made him feel like he did not have to be perfect. Before Emily, Nathan had always believed people only valued him for his achievements, his success, his ability to solve problems. But she was different. She cared about the person behind the accomplishments. She was the first person who made him feel accepted without needing to prove anything. Emily wiped away a tear as she watched him smile at the memory. Then his expression changed. I think I forgot something important, Nathan said. I forgot that the person who believed in me the most was not asking me to build a bigger future. She was asking me to be present in the one we already had. Those words stayed with Emily, because they were exactly what she had been trying to tell him without knowing how. The video continued. Nathan showed pictures of their life together. Their first vacation. The day they brought Liam home. The mornings when they would sit together before starting their day. Every memory showed a version of them that still existed somewhere beneath all the distance. Then Nathan said something that made Emily stop breathing for a moment. If you are watching this because we are having a hard time, I need you to know something. I never stopped choosing you. I just became terrible at showing you that I was still choosing you. Emily looked away from the screen. She had spent so long feeling abandoned that she never considered Nathan might have been silently struggling too. They had both been waiting for the other person to notice, waiting for the other person to speak first, waiting until the silence became too heavy to ignore. The video ended with Nathan holding a small drawing Liam had made. It was a simple picture of three people holding hands. "This is what I want our family to always be," Nathan said. "Not perfect, just together." When the screen went dark, Emily remained sitting there. The house was quiet, but it no longer felt empty. For the first time, she could see the difference between a relationship that had lost love and a relationship that had lost communication. She picked up her phone and looked at Nathan's name. Her finger hovered over the call button. She was still hurt. She still had questions. She still needed him to understand how lonely she had felt. But she also knew something had changed. She did not want to return to the old marriage they had before. She wanted to know if they could build something better, something honest, something where neither of them had to hide their fears behind silence. Then, before she could make the decision herself, her phone began to ring. Nathan's name appeared on the screen. Emily stared at it, knowing that this conversation would change everything between them. Emily stared at her phone as Nathan's name continued to appear on the screen. For a moment, she felt like she was standing between two different versions of her life. The life where she walked away because she believed she was no longer important, and the life where she finally understood that there was still something worth fighting for. Her heart was telling her to answer, but her fear reminded her of all the nights she had gone to bed feeling alone. She took a slow breath and pressed the button. "Hello." Her voice was quiet. On the other end, Nathan did not speak immediately. Emily could hear the familiar sound of his breathing, the same calm but tired voice she had heard through the baby monitor. "Emily," he finally said. "I am glad you answered." She closed her eyes. Hearing him say her name felt different now. Not like a distant husband calling because he needed something. It sounded like a man who was afraid of losing someone who mattered more than anything. "Nathan, I watched the video," she said. There was a pause. A long one. "You found it," he replied softly. "I did not know if I wanted you to." Emily looked around the living room, the place where they had created so many memories. "Why did you never tell me any of those things?" she asked. Nathan sighed. "Because I thought I had to fix everything before I could talk about it." Emily felt tears forming again. "But you were not giving me a chance to stand beside you. You were shutting me out." "I know," Nathan said. His answer came quickly, without excuses. And that is the part one regret the most. For the first time, Emily heard something she had been hoping for all along. Not an explanation, not a defense, an honest acknowledgement of her pain. Nathan continued, "I spent so much time thinking about how to protect our family that I forgot protecting our family meant protecting our connection too." Emily sat down slowly on the couch. She wanted to be angry. She wanted to remind him of every lonely dinner, every forgotten conversation, every moment she felt like she was carrying their marriage alone. But she also knew that this was the first real conversation they had had in a long time. "Do you know what hurt the most?" Emily asked. "It was not the work. It was not the long hours. It was feeling like you did not even notice I was disappearing." Nathan became quiet. "I noticed," he finally said. "I just did not know how to stop it." Those words surprised her. "What do you mean?" Nathan took a deep breath. "I noticed every time you stopped telling me about your day. I noticed when you stopped asking me to come with you places. I noticed when you started smiling less. But every time I saw it, I felt like I had already failed you. And instead of fixing it, I buried myself deeper in work." Emily looked down at her hands. She realized they had both been reacting to the same pain in different ways. She withdrew because she felt unwanted. Nathan withdrew because he felt like he was failing. They were both hurt, but neither of them knew how to reach the other. "I do not want to go back to how things were," Emily said. "I cannot pretend everything is fine." "I do not want that either," Nathan answered. "I do not want the old version of us. I want something better, something where we actually talk. Something where you do not have to wonder if you matter to me." Emily remained silent for a moment. Then she heard a small voice in the background. "Daddy," Liam called softly. A small smile appeared on Emily's face despite everything. Nathan must have looked toward their son because his voice changed immediately. It became warmer. "I am here, buddy." That simple moment reminded Emily of something important. Their family was not perfect. They had made mistakes. They had hurt each other without meaning to. But love was still there. It had been there beneath the silence, waiting for them to finally choose honesty over pride. "Can I come home tomorrow?" Emily asked quietly. Nathan did not answer right away. When he did, his voice was full of emotion. "I would like that more than anything." Emily looked around the house one more time before ending the call. For the first time in a long time, returning home did not feel like going back to the past. It felt like taking the first step towards something new. Emily returned home the next morning with a mixture of emotions she could not fully explain. She expected the house to feel uncomfortable, like a place filled with memories of everything that had gone wrong. But when she opened the front door and stepped inside, she noticed something different. It was not the house that had changed. It was the way she was seeing it. For the first time in a long time, she was not walking in with disappointment. She was walking in with the possibility of healing. Nathan was waiting in the living room with Liam in his arms. The moment their son saw her, his face immediately brightened. "Mommy," Liam called out, reaching toward her. Emily smiled through the tears that formed in her eyes and hugged him tightly. She had missed this. The simple moments. The warmth. The feeling of being exactly where she belonged. Nathan watched quietly, giving them space. He did not rush toward her. He did not try to act like everything was normal. Emily noticed that immediately. The old Nathan would have tried to solve the situation with quick promises or grand gestures. This Nathan simply stood there, ready to listen. After Liam went to his room to play, Emily and Nathan sat across from each other at the kitchen table. The same table where so many unfinished conversations had happened. But this time, neither of them looked away. "I want you to know something," Nathan said. "I am not expecting everything to go back to normal overnight." Emily nodded slowly. "Good, because I do not think we can go back." Nathan looked down for a moment, then nodded. "You are right. We cannot go back." He looked at her again. "But maybe we can move forward." Those words stayed between them. Not a promise that everything would suddenly become easy. Not a guarantee that they would never hurt each other again. Just an honest decision to try. Over the next few weeks, they started rebuilding the small things they had lost. They ate dinner together without phones on the table. They talked about their days instead of assuming the other person would understand. Nathan started leaving work earlier whenever possible. Not because Emily demanded it, but because he finally understood that being present was part of being a husband and a father. Emily also learned to speak honestly instead of hiding her feelings until they became impossible to carry. She told Nathan when she felt overwhelmed. She told him when she needed support. She stopped expecting him to read her thoughts, and he stopped expecting himself to solve everything alone. One evening, Nathan came home and found Emily sitting on the floor with Liam, helping him build a tower of blocks. He stood in the doorway for a moment, quietly watching the scene. Months ago, he would have seen it as something ordinary. Now he understood it was something precious. Emily noticed him and smiled. "You are home early." Nathan smiled back. "I wanted to be." That simple answer meant more than any expensive gift ever could, because it showed a change that came from within. Later that night, after Liam was asleep, Nathan and Emily sat together on the couch. The room was quiet, but this time the silence felt peaceful. "I used to think love meant never making mistakes," Nathan admitted. "I was wrong. I think love means being willing to repair what you break." Emily looked at him. "And I used to think leaving was the only way to make someone understand my pain." She paused. "But sometimes people do not need to lose you to love you. Sometimes they just need the chance to truly see you." Nathan reached for her hand. This time, Emily held it back. It was not a perfect moment. There was still healing ahead. There were still conversations they needed to have. But something important had returned. They were no longer two people standing on opposite sides of a broken connection. They were two people choosing, day by day, to build a stronger one. 1 year later, Emily stood in the doorway of their living room, watching the same place that once felt filled with silence, now overflowing with laughter. The walls had not changed much. The furniture was still the same. The small wooden table where so many difficult conversations had happened was still in the center of the room. But everything felt different because the people sitting around it were different. Nathan was on the floor with Liam, helping him build a tower of colorful blocks. Their son laughed every time the tower fell, and Nathan patiently started again. Emily smiled as she watched them. It was a simple moment, but it was the kind of moment she once feared they had lost forever. There were still days when rebuilding their marriage felt difficult. Healing did not happen in one conversation. Trust did not return overnight. There were moments when old fears appeared again, when Emily remembered the loneliness she had carried, and Nathan remembered the guilt of realizing how distant he had become. But now they faced those moments together instead of hiding from them. They learned that love was not only found in the big promises made during special occasions. Love was found in everyday choices. It was Nathan putting his phone away during dinner because he wanted to hear about Emily's day. It was Emily asking Nathan how he was truly feeling instead of assuming she already knew the answer. It was both of them choosing honesty even when honesty felt uncomfortable. Nathan had changed in ways that surprised everyone who knew him. The man who once believed success meant constantly moving forward had learned the value of slowing down. He started spending more mornings with Liam before work. He became involved in the small routines he had once missed, like reading bedtime stories and making breakfast on weekends. Emily also changed. She no longer carried every emotion silently, hoping someone would notice. She learned that allowing someone to support her was not a weakness. It was a way of building a stronger connection. One evening, after Liam had gone to sleep, Nathan asked Emily to join him in the backyard. The same backyard where they had once celebrated Liam's first birthday. The lights were soft, and the night was quiet. Nathan looked nervous, which surprised Emily because she had rarely seen him nervous before. "I have been thinking about something," he said. "When we first got married, I thought love meant promising someone that you would never hurt them. But that was impossible. We are human. We make mistakes. We misunderstand each other." He looked at her with a gentle smile. "I think real love means promising that when we hurt each other, we will not run away. We will come back. We will listen. We will choose each other again." Emily felt tears in her eyes. She thought about the woman who had stood outside their house with a suitcase, believing she had already lost everything. She thought about the woman who had watched her husband through a small screen, expecting to find proof that she no longer mattered. Instead, she found a reminder that people could change when they were willing to face the truth. Nathan reached into his pocket and held out a small envelope. Inside was a simple handwritten note. It was not an expensive gift. It was not something designed to impress anyone. It was a promise written from the heart. Emily read the words quietly and smiled. It said, "I do not want a perfect life with you. I want a real life with you. The kind where we keep choosing each other, even on the difficult days." She looked at Nathan and held his hand. Their story was never about a perfect marriage. It was about two people who almost lost each other because they forgot how to communicate. It was about learning that love could survive mistakes when both people were willing to grow. Years later, Emily would look back on that difficult season and realize something important. Sometimes the moment that feels like the end is actually the beginning of understanding. Sometimes distance reveals what was always there. And sometimes the strongest families are not the ones that never struggle. They are the ones that find their way back to each other.